actual implementation of creating the image recognition app with ReactJS, AWS Amplify, and all of the required um, AWS services. Just a little background on the AWS service that we're going to be using that actually is going to be doing a lot of the work for the image recognition. It's all actually called Amazon Rekognition. Okay, and some of the features of this particular service, as you see right here, it can detect faces in images, face compare and search, face detection and analysis. So it's using machine learning to get all of this done. What we're going to be doing is going to be using this basically labels right here. This labels function, detect objects, scenes, activities, landmarks, and everything inside of an image. So it's really cool. I want to create an app that basically allows us to identify just certain objects. Okay, so this is going to be a broad use case. All right, so without further ado, let's actually get into it. This video may run a little bit long. So the first order of business that we're going to need to do is, of course, install all dependencies. Now, I released a YouTube video where I actually went through the setup of AWS Amplify. And so I'm going to just do it really quickly just to be thorough. But I have a previous video where I explained this in a little bit more depth. So I'm installing the AWS Amplify CLI first thing. And I've created a brand new React app for this. So it's a blank canvas. So we're going to go through and just make sure that we have all of the Amplify requirements installed. Okay. All right. So I did delete the previous user. So Amplify needs to have access to AWS services. And in order to do that, we need to create an IAM user, which has access keys. So those basically it's an IAM role a user and a role that has permissions that allow it to use AWS services. Okay. So we're going to go to AWS configure. Before we do that, we actually need to begin a console right here. So it opened up the console for us, which is really cool. So we need to go to IAM. I need to create a user really quickly. All right, so the user, I want to, I'll just call it AMP. Okay. I do not want this user to have AWS access. And the permissions that I want to give it are going to be associated with, let me go back here, create user. And I want to give this user a role. So I want to add permissions here. Attach permissions directly. So I should do. So Amplify. AWS AMP. Administrator access Amplify. That's what we want. Okay. For this particular user. So we want to add those permissions. And finally, we want to go to the security credentials, and we want to create some new access keys. So that's what the CLI utility will be using to access these AWS resources. So I just want to do command line interface. And I will be deleting these access keys after this demo. It's just for convenience that we want to do it this way. So we go back to the command line. Again, this whole setup was triggered by the Amplify configure command. So we hit continue. We want to select our region. Okay. All right, we already got the user. So we want to go ahead and enter the access key ID that we got for the user. Okay, so that's this guy right here. Okay. All right, now we want to get the secret access key. That's this guy right there. Profile name, we'll just call it default. All right, and the user is now set up, okay? So that's actually gonna be, what we need just for configuring the user. Now the next command we're gonna run is Amplify init. So this is gonna set up a new project in the current directory, okay? So another thing, let me just go ahead and show you something here so we can see kind of how this works almost in real time. Let's see, Amplify. I just want to show you the app kind of being generated on the GUI. So right now I don't have any apps installed, okay? All right, except for this is the image classification app that I previously built, which is kind of what this tutorial is going to show you how to do. And so I have amp init right here. Amplify init. Okay, and this is going to create a new project for us. Okay, so the name for the project, we're going to call this Amplify YouTube. And those are all the parameters there. So Amplify YouTube is a project name, and we got a dev environment. And so watch what's going to happen over here. It's going to create a new directory, and the directory is going to be called Amplify. All right, and as we walk through the prompts, we want to select the authentication method we want to use. So we just created a brand new AWS IAM user for this particular activity. And to do that, we actually set the default profile to use it. So we want to hit AWS profile. We want to select the default. All right, and now it's provisioning all those resources in the cloud. Okay. So it's using CloudFormation and under the hood. It's provisioning an S3 bucket and IAM roles that we need to serve the static files in this particular application. All right. This application is pretty simple to set up, and that's going to be largely due to one of the packages I found for React. It's called it's React Webcam. It's very powerful, and it's a very convenient library. This is going to allow us to, get an image, and it's going to already have the image prepared in the base 64 format. And so we're going to get into that here in a moment, but it really does a lot of the image processing for us. So let me see here. We want to hit no on this. It's basically asking us what we like to share information about, failures that the CLI utility runs across. So we want to say no. All right, so now it's deploying all these files. Okay, so now we're good. Okay, so it created this new app right here, Amplify YouTube, while I was talking. So that's great. So now we can kind of get into installing the dependency. So let me just do npm I because from my previous application, I copied over the package.json. And so I just want to make sure that all these libraries are inside the node modules before we begin here. Actually, let me cd into this. Cd into. So npm I. So this is making sure that all of the dependencies inside of the package.json are in node modules. Okay. All right. So it's taking a little. It's doing its thing here. So that's great. Installing AWS SDK, Amplify the React Webcam. Okay. So when I first created this app, I actually had to set this up with a MERN, uh, a MERN framework. So MERN it stands for MongoDB, ExpressJS, React, and Node.js. Say, but with this Amplify, we were able just to kind of use serverless services for a lot of the back end that we would have had to have used if we had this done with containers. All right, so I know that's probably a mouthful and a lot of jargon, but it'll make more sense going forward. Okay, so the first thing we want to do here is we want to go ahead and set up all of our dependencies, okay? And dependency or our imports rather, okay? All right, and these imports, all right. So these imports, some of this is standard React use effect and use state. This is the React webcam I was talking about. So this is a handler for the webcam, and we also need to import in both of these particular these components. And this AWS mobile, let me see here. I don't think that's installed yet. So once we set up the hosting, I believe we should actually get. Once we actually do a push, we should actually get this AWS exports. Okay, so still not done with the setup here. So we did AWS Amplify and init. Now what we want to do is we want to add an API and a Lambda function. Okay, so what this means is we want to, whenever you add anything to your Amplify application, you typically have a service called AWS Add API or add a database or add geo if we want to get into maps and whatnot, which is something I want to do a little bit later. So in this case, I actually do want to add an API backend. So we have the front end. We're getting ready to add a back end. Okay. Right now, there's nothing. It's not configured, but we're going to do this right now. So we want to do Amplify add API and let this utility go to work. Okay. All right. So that's just it's gonna give us an option on what type of protocol we want to use, GraphQL or REST. So we're going to use REST. All right. And it's going to add a friendly name to this resource. Okay. I want to just call this. I'm going to call this Amplify YouTube again. This is called the whole project Amplify YouTube. Oops. Yeah. This didn't work. Oh, there we go. Copying. I'm going to call it Amplify YouTube. Friendly name for the resource. Okay. A path. Okay. So in the application, what this endpoint is going to be doing, this is going to end up being a post call. So that means we're sending data to the back end so we can process it. In this case, we're going to be sending coordinates actually, but we're also going to be sending the image data to the back end to be processed to the AWS Rekognition service. Okay, so I actually have in the application there is a endpoint called upload. So that's what we want to use. Okay, so we want to call this upload. Okay, and AWS function name, we'll just call it the same thing. Let's keep it. I just want to try keeping everything the same name. So the Lambda function name is Amplify YouTube. We're going to have a Python backend, and I chose Python because it actually handles images a little bit better. We're actually going to be using a package called Pillow, or a library called Pillow, to help with the image processing, and we're going to get to that in a little bit. So we want to choose Python. We're not going to go into any of the advanced settings right now because, I just want to get the core essence of this application. So it's asking us for like advanced options. Do you want to configure these advanced settings? I want to say no. Do you want to configure the Lambda function now? You can say yes right now, just so we can get a pointer to where it's at. So this is where it's located, this Lambda function. All right, so it's under here. So it's under Amplify Backend Function, Amplify Backend Function, Source, and then index.py. So this is our Lambda function. Okay, this is what's going to get pushed up into the cloud momentarily. So it's asking us if we want to restrict API access. We don't want to do that right now. All right. And you want to add another path? No. Keep it simple. All right. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do the amplify push. Let me just confirm that with my guide here. Yep. So amplify push. This is going to all these resources here. It's going to push them to the back end. Okay. Right now these don't exist. All these all of the like the Lambda function, it's been configured locally. Okay. All right. So we're gonna push this out to the cloud by using amplify push. Okay. So again, what amplify push does, it builds all of your local backend resources and provisions them to the cloud. It's simply stated right there. So we're gonna go to push. Okay, that may take a moment. So it's seeing it's fetching updates. All right, so it's going to create all these resources. Okay, create a function API, and it's all using CloudFormation. Looks like it's creating a virtual environment, all that stuff. Okay. All right. So while that's happening there, let me go ahead and open up a couple more tabs so we can actually look at some of this. All right. Updating progress. Okay. Yep. So it takes a moment, but you can see the resources being deployed here. If we check out CloudFormation, so this is us right here. It's 12:51. So this is actually us creating this stack right here. Say, all right, events. All right, so it's almost so these are in sync. Now, one thing I do want to go ahead and take note of, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. It does have to do with the Lambda function. With the Lambda function, we want to use this thing called layers. I have a layer for the image processing that I'm adding to the function. So the layer is just like, it's just so for packages that you normally would use a lot, instead of basically having them be included with every deployment, you can just go ahead and just prepare those so that they're ready every time, so that applications can use those libraries, because they're going to be needed very often. So Amazon AWS Lambda allows us to use what's called layers. And so again, layers is just basically a way for us to consistently access libraries that we want to use across a wide array of functions, applications. So it's just very handy. All right, so over here we have the REST API endpoint, and if I just do a curl real quick, I'll show you that it's going to give us this reply right here. Hello from your new AWS Lambda Python function. Okay. So if I go to curl, let's see here, curl, and then I add upload because upload is going to be the endpoint that we want to hit. So right now this is accepting all requests. Okay, so you see it says hello from your new Lambda Python. Hello from your new Amplify Python Lambda. Okay, which is exactly this. So that means the Lambda has been deployed, and the backend is, ready for us to configure. Um, but before we do that, I don't want to forget this because it's that important. Let me go ahead and okay. So I want to go ahead and get the Lambda or the layer that I'm using right here. So here it is. So this is the layer that I'm using. It's called Pillow. Okay. So I'm going to be adding this to our function a little bit later. So let me go ahead and do this real quick. All right. So this is this layer is also, it's like universal. So anyone can use this layer because image processing is very is a very common usage for lambdas, and so these libraries are just made available in a layer, which we can include inside of our lambda function and just import it to use the library. Okay, so we'll see how that works in a little bit. Okay, so we know that the API works. We just tested it. This API gateway is proxying this request to the Amazon Lambda, this AWS Lambda, and this Lambda we just saw return this response, which is great. Okay, so now the next thing we want to do, we can just take a look and we can see that our function is already created too. Yeah, so Amplify YouTube Dev. Okay. So now we should be okay. All right. Amplify demo. All right. So I created a repo for this. Let me make sure. A GitHub repo, which we're gonna need for CI/CD. I think let me see here. Amplify demo. Let me see if this is actually the right one. No, I think okay. I may just need to create a brand new repo real quick. Yeah, because this is saying 7 hours ago. I didn't create. So let me just create a new repo real quick. Yeah. Amplify demo. YouTube. I'll call it walkthrough. Walkthrough. Cool. Call that this Amplify demo walkthrough. And then let me create this repo really quickly because we're gonna need to configure Amplify to use this repo here in a second. So now let me just go ahead and initialize this repo real quick. Okay, we git add it. All right. Actually, git reset. I want to make sure that the git ignore doesn't copy in the amplify. Yeah, let me just do that as well. So, yeah, when you're recording, you just kind of maybe some oversights. AMP. I. FY. All right, so this get ignore is Okay, all right, I'm sorry. All right, so it actually created a get ignore for us. Okay, that's great. So let me just go ahead and do get add. Let me just go ahead and take care of that. Get add, get commit. -m. First save. It's like the typical message. And get push. And when we go back here, we hit a refresh and we should see everything. Yeah, so now this is us. And we don't have the Amplify configurations, which is great. So we also now have that AWS exports, which is what we need. This is AWS exports has all of our configuration information. Okay, so it's going to have the URL for the API gateway. So let's take a look at that. So that's in source AWS export. So this is the endpoint that we just used to actually make that curl request. All right, so all this is starting to begin to come together. So now we have this. We can actually just kind of go ahead and just definitely get in the front end just knocked out, and I can just kind of walk you through what's what's going on over here. So with respect to the front end, let's go ahead and do this here. Okay, so what I've mentioned before is these are all the imports required to get this up and running. Okay, including the Amplify component, the API component, which we're going to use, and the AWS Mobile, which is basically an import of this configuration here. Okay, all right, so we're going to go ahead and let's see here. I'm gonna go ahead and just, I'm just gonna go ahead and copy most of this here and just cut to the chase so we can go over it here in a little bit. All right, copy this, and I'll explain what all this is doing. Okay. All right. So first things first. What these functions are actually doing? So these functions are being called when this webcam is actually. Well, let me just go ahead and just start. Let me run this. Let me do npm start. Let me just get this up and running so you can see. All right, so I have a AWS exports. Oh, okay, it has two sources. That's why. Why did it do that? Weird. Okay. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I actually made it. Maybe I made a small mistake. So I may be in so this directory that I'm in. So what I need to do is let me fix this error. So pwd. All right. If I do an ls here. Okay. Image recognition. So this AWS exports needs to go in here. That way it should work. All right, I stopped it. So let me npm start again. Okay, so I need to add the CSS to this, but this is, the image classification. So that's up and running. And what's going to end up happening is, again, I have CSS associated with this, but I will get that up and running in a little bit. All right, so let me go ahead and stop this. So just want to say that this is, this is working. So the webcam is actually working. Okay. All right. Let me stop this real quick. Okay. So the way this is going to work here is, so some of these, are not going to be needed. So what we just saw right here, let me just go to the HTML, okay? We have our webcam object, which is what we got from the React webcam, okay? And the React webcam, it has attributes that we can set, which is related to formatting and the size of the window that we want to capture video, and also video constraints. So this basically means, so I'm on my laptop right now. But when you actually, run this on your phone, you can have, you can take cameras with your phone, from the front, or, you can turn it, and have it facing the rear. So that's kind of what that setting is doing. So the facing mode here, okay. And listen, this is really the main thing here on this particular app is just going to be configuring the webcam, React webcam, and buttons that are going to be able to capture the data or capture the image with the webcam. All right, we're gonna upload this information as well to S3, or well, actually to the Lambda function, and that's going to take care of the S3. We're going to get to that in a second. And this this button right here also just handles a toggle. Okay, and these are the functions that actually kind of get that done. Let me go ahead and get the CSS associated with this, though, actually. So again, the main thing about this React app right here is it's going to be, we're using the Amplify components, which we'll do in a second, and we're going to be using this React webcam. Okay, this is enough to get us to pass this data to the back end. Okay, so let me show you what that looks like. Okay, so all right, so first things first. What I want to do here. Let's go ahead and I'm sorry. Let me go ahead and get the CSS actually. So let me see here. So I had another project here. Let me get the CSS. Copy. So the CSS is just gives us some styling for this app, so that if we were to run it again, npm start, it has some styling. Okay, so this is kind of what styling. All right, so so it's starting to come together. Okay, and I'll have this code available for everyone. But I'm just kind of really letting you know, hey, what are the main pieces are here to setting this up. And yeah, so one thing I did notice this API, I was having issues with the API component. So I will try to actually, let me try to actually do it here. And let me put me. So I ended up having to use a workaround to basically send this data to send this data to the back end. All right, so let me stop this here. Line 194. 94. Okay, all right, so let me stop this. Okay. Okay, actually, I'm just gonna leave this alone. So we can actually use, this API post method here that Amplify gives us. It may work, but I found that the workaround is just like, it's just more convenient for me. So actually, I'm just gonna do the workaround because I already have it set up, and I don't want to trip over my feet here like when I'm doing this video. So, but the main thing here is that we actually feed in the API gateway endpoint. Yeah, in another video, I'll have that one ready. But I had some issues with it, and so I'm just gonna go ahead and use my workaround because I trust it. All right, so we just want to replace this right here. Okay, so this is basically the the logic that I have that's basically going to capture the image data. So it's going to be in base 64, and then we're going to send it to the back end. Okay, but right now, all that's going to happen is the back end is just going to be able to. It's just going to print out the object that we send back to it. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like, anyways. So. Actually, I just remember. So we have this already set up. Okay. So now we have the front end set up. Okay. Let's go ahead actually, and we got to configure AWS Amplify with the hosting, and we also need to set up our continuous integration and a continuous deployment. And what that's going to entail, that's going to entail us configuring the GitHub repo that we just configured. Associate this with the Amplify service. So we need to get that done, and that's going to be over here, AWS hosting add. Okay, so we're still moving right along with the plan of the day. So pwd ls. Okay, you're in the right directory. Let's do AWS hosting add. Allow us to deploy our application to the cloud, and it's going to allow us to have a domain name where we can serve this publicly. All right, so right now we want to just use the option hosting with Amplify console just for demonstration purposes. Okay, let's do a continuous deployment. It's asking us the type of deployment. We want to do a continuous deployment. So that means whenever we make these changes to our application and we commit those changes, they're going to be picked up automatically by cloud or by Amplify. Okay. All right. So the first thing we got to do though is we just need to just give Amplify permissions to work on our branch. Okay. So I only have 3 here. The new branch that we created was called Amplify Demo Walkthrough. So we just need to go ahead and configure that one. And in order to do that, we need to set the permissions here by doing this first. So let me do that. All right. So, oops. So what do I call this? Let's see here. Amplify Demo Walkthrough. Okay, there we got that. So Amplify Demo Walkthrough. We've added that to the repos that Amplify has access to. So we're going to go ahead and save that. And so that's saved. And now we just go back to the console. We go back to GitHub Connect branch, and that refreshes. Authorization successful. Now we should see that Amplify demo walkthrough. So this is the repo that we want, main branch. So that means we're basically setting up the continuous integration and continuous deployment. So whenever we make these changes to the repo, you're going to see it up here. We want to get dev. All right, this is the app name. Yep. Enable full stack continuous deployment right there. We want to get a role. Let's get Amplify access backend role. So I mean, these are just basically setting the role for Amplify to actually perform these the continuous deployment actions. Okay, so this is permissions. What this is here, this is basically so you can use what's called a amplify.yaml, which basically instructions. So it's like a pipeline that has instructions for each stage of like the continuous integration, continuous deployment process. Okay, but right now this is a basic CI/CD or basic pipeline which Amplify gives us. All right, and all it's doing is it's just building out our application. It's just running npm build, and it's gonna serve it, basically. Okay, so we're just gonna next. Let's go ahead and save and deploy this. Okay, so it's gonna pick up. All right, so it's gonna pick up all of the code on that repo, and it's gonna build it up. So let's take a look and see what that looks like here. So the front end, we're actually getting that done. This should actually not be too much longer. It's not working yet. Okay, so we got the provision, so it's already got the code. Now let's see. We may get an error, and it may be an error related to AWS exports. We'll see. Let me see something here. If we get a certain error, I'll know what to do with it, and so. Okay, so let's take a look at the logging statements here. And once the front end is done, we're gonna just move right onto the back end, and that's gonna be the Lambda. So we just want to get this, build. Wait, Python 3 found. Okay, so it looks like it failed. Why did it fail? Missing required dependencies. Python. Okay. Python 3 found. Pip3 install user env. I wonder why that matters on the front end though. Why is that mattering here? Okay, I may need to do a little bit of investigating why this is failing. You know what? Sometimes GPT is the thing to do here. I ain't gonna lie, especially when I'm recording. So I'm gonna say, I mean, the message actually it's saying it's related to Python, which I don't see how that's associated because, well, okay, I'm sorry, it's the back end. Okay, I'm sorry, the back end is being built. Yeah, I'm sorry, that makes sense. But why Python 3 version is found? You must have. It can be installed by running this pip3 install pipe user in V. Okay, so I think this may be remediated by adding a amplify.yaml. Let me just confirm that with GPT. Okay, initialize your environment again. Let me try a. Let me try a. Let me do. Hit enter over here. Please enter. Okay, so this is done. Continuous deployment is done. Okay, let me do an amplify. AMPL. Okay, okay, I think I understand what may happen. Pip env. It's saying missing requirements. Okay, backend function. This pip file. Okay, I'm gonna stop recording so I can figure this out. I ended up having to take a look at the GitHub issues for that last delay, and I did find an issue related to Amplify can't find Python 3.8 on build stage of CI/CD, and I ended up having to use this piece of code here that creates it's like a symlink to pip 3.8, and that associates that with pip 3. Another symlink that associates Python 3.8 to Python 3. And yeah, so I mean, this issue was still present. Okay, I'm not gonna lie. And so what I had to do as a workaround was I needed to go to build settings, and I literally I was like help, but I literally had to add that code here under build settings. So I don't know, Amazon, maybe you want to get on that. All right, so I have the front end built now. All right, and again, that was completely, you know, that required a workaround. So right now, I will say I'll allow this, and here I am. So there I am, and we'll turn it off here. So we have the app actually running in Amplify, and it's been deployed successfully. And we can start looking at that a little bit later here. All right, so let's just kind of take a look back and go to the app here. All right, let's just go ahead and get this. Let me delete this here. I was troubleshooting that issue. Okay, so right now we have the front end working. Okay, but we still need to make sure the actual functionality is there. So what functionality I mean here is, so we're not going to do the GPS right now. So let me go ahead and I'm going to take that off just for a second. I'm going to take out the GPS right here. And so we're actually just going to go to a little test just to see if the data, if the image data, the base64 data is actually present. So that base64 data, so the image, as I understand it, the base64 it's like an encoding. So it encodes binary to ASCII. So that means that the image can be represented in text. That's as clearly as I can state it. So it's just a format that allows for the image to be transferred over networks, um, via text, and it's called Base64. So in the application, I'm actually printing that out. Uh, so when I do take a photo, I actually am printing out the console log COLN. I'm printing out the Base64. So let me see. Let's see what the next one is. It's right here. So I'm actually so when I upload whenever I upload this data, I am console logging it here. So let's just see if that's actually present on the actual application right now. So yeah, it's Sunday. It's Sunday. It's football day. So I'm chilling. All right. So if we go to capture, so yeah, it's supposed to know my location because I have I did configure it to grab location. Um, So so it actually did give us a location. I need to verify why that's the case. All right, so if I go to upload, okay. All right, so we know the backend is working. Okay, so this actually did print out the base64 that we wanted, and also this Python or the response from the Python as it stands right now. So everything's fine right now. This is good. So I'm gonna turn this off, and now we're gonna start configuring that backend, the Python backend, and we're gonna do that locally. Okay, so we're gonna go to the backend. So we want to configure the Lambda function now. So the Lambda function that's going to be under Amplify, backend, function, source, and we're going to setup.py or index.py. Okay, and I already have all this set up, so I'm going to walk us through the code here. Um, so, okay. So I'm going to go ahead and copy paste this whole code here, and I'm going to explain it. Okay. All right. So number one, in order for all this to work, okay, we need to be using S3. Okay. So I already provisioned an S3 bucket for this use case and a DynamoDB table because these together are going to satisfy the operation of an application that I wanted to use, where I basically capture the binary data, or I capture the image data and the coordinates, and I stored both of those in a database for a particular use case. So that's kind of why I have this set up right here. So for this particular backend, we're going to need to be able to work with JSON data, the operating system. So this is this pill image right here. This is going to be, I may just need to comment this out for now because it may throw an error because I haven't set up the Lambda layer, which I discussed earlier. So this base64, this bytes.io, Bodo3 and hashlib. So all of these together are what I'm using to process the process responses that I get back from process responses that the Lambda number one gives us by the events. And like I said, I'm dealing with base64 data, and I'm also dealing with having to convert this base64 data back to bytes. And so all of this basically, I'm going to be kind of going through here. But the first thing first, let me go ahead and push this up to the cloud here. So to use that command called amplify push, because we made a change to the backend Lambda. So that's going to notify. It's going to detect the change, and it's going to update the Lambda function. And we're going to show you that here in a second. Amplify push. So this is detecting. I think it's just detecting any changes in this directory here, this Amplify directory. Okay, and so that's what we see here. So Amplify, the hosting is getting updated, and the function is getting updated. Okay, so let's go yes. Let's hit yes. Okay. So all of this is going to see here. It's going to be visible and amplify. Okay, so it's like 4 seconds ago. It's already started to get updated. See, update and process this Lambda function. Okay, and update complete. So it just finished. So 14 seconds ago. It actually updates pretty nicely. So we're probably not gonna be able to see this. It's probably see this. It gives us this message: the deployment package is too large to see. So we're unable to see it from the code editor. The actual code that I just pushed up to Lambda, which is in here. You see, but that's what I just pushed up to Lambda. Okay. All right, and so here, what's basically happening here is we want to start with the Lambda handler. Okay. So what happens with AWS Lambda is this is a serverless application, and so it gets triggered by events. And the event that we're triggering it, this is going to be about API gateway. So this is actually an endpoint, an API gateway endpoint, and that request, that payload is being proxied on over to this Lambda function, and then that data is going to show up as an event. Like that's the main thing. So API gateway, the Lambda, that triggers this function. Whenever the API gateway is invoked, the way it's set up right now, whereas any requests can trigger this, that's just going to cause this Lambda the Lambda to trigger. Okay, and the way that I have set this up here is the data, the body is going to contain the base 64 data, and also it's going to contain information about the coordinates where the image was taken. Okay, so that's what this is actually doing right here. This is basically going through, converting a string, which there's a key inside this event. It's called body. That's a string that we just want to parse it for JSON, which this is parsing for JSON. And then inside there's a key called base64 data, and that's the image. Okay, that's the actual image that we have. And so this base64 string, I also created another function called hash base64 string, and what that does is it basically just kind of creates a hash of that particular string, which it's just a value that needs to be stored inside the. I'm also storing this data inside of a database, okay? And so this particular function, it just converts that base64 string over to like a hash value. It's like a cryptographic, signature, I guess, and it basically just saves disk space. Okay, so you can't store data in a database outside of a certain size limit, and so this is basically it just converts it over to using like an algorithm to a separate value, which we can retrieve retroactively and get the image. So that was a mouthful, but that's kind of what's happening right here. But the main thing is that we're getting this data that's being passed on over to the Lambda function, and we're just extracting out data from. We're extracting out what we place inside of this. Again, the base 64 data and the latitude and longitude. And here we're going to start getting into the image processing. Before we can do that, we got to go and add this layer here, this this Lambda layer. This Lambda layer has a library called Pillow inside of it, which I try to deploy this with the Lambda function, like inside a deployment package, and it just there's just errors. So thank goodness that this Lambda layer, which basically it's if you have a library that you're going to use often, you can just put it in what's called a layer. That way, all of your, or maybe you have multiple Lambda functions that need to have access to the same library, then you can use what's called a layer. Okay, so we want to go to layers, add a layer, specify an RN, and we can just paste that in here, and that's going to work. So we can add it. So now this Lambda function has that layer. Okay. All right. So it's using this layer. So that layer, again, that's Pillow. That's what's going to allow us to use this image.open here. So so what I can do here is I'm actually just going to go ahead and redeploy this now that I have that imported, and I can kind of continue where we left off. Okay, so let me just go ahead and push that on up again, because it's going to detect that change. So it's an amplify push. Okay. So while that's going to push it, I'll just go ahead and still just kind of get into what these methods are doing. So I mean, this particular method, this is related to DynamoDB. Again, I created a table called let's see here. Yes, I created a table that basically holds all the information for my application, which is called Doggone GPT. This is related to the S3. So the way I have it running right now is I basically take this image, I save it here locally in S3, and then I upload it to, excuse me, I save it here locally to Lambda, and then I upload it to S3, and then from S3 we have AWS Rekognition to come and detect what the image is. Okay, so that's so we kind of went over the database entries there. This is using that AWS Rekognition. Okay, so all it is just getting the object from S3, and it's gonna be using a method called detect labels, which is kind of what I showed you at the beginning, to detect items that are actually inside of the photo. Okay, so it detects multiple things, and with that, I have a particular use case for this. Depending on what's in the image, I can do other things with it, but for our purposes, it's pretty accurate with describing what it sees. Okay, so the method is called like detect labels. So that's basically what's happening here. Okay, and with recognition, the way you do that is you have to have an object inside of the correct format inside S3. All right, so that's like my image.jpg. I call everything image.jpg just right now, just for convenience. So this one bucket is just doing one thing right now, and it's just holding these. It's just a place storage for these images, so I can just do this image processing. So everything I push up to S3, I'm just calling it image.jpg. Okay, and that's what it's called here. Um, so I'm saving it locally here to Lambda. And then I'm also uploading it to S3. So that's just kind of how I got it to work right now. So here's the function to upload it to S3. And hey, that's really basically kind of all that's happening here. Okay, we use this image.io. So the way I understand this particular, this is important because so the image it's a base 64 string, and the base 64 string needs to be converted back into bytes in order for it to actually be processed correctly. And so this bytes.io, it just creates like a it allows that image to be read like a file, okay? And this image.io, I actually got this code from GPT. Um, it just allows us to kind of save that image. So it basically converts it back from base 64, which is text, to binary. That's, long story short, that's what's happening here. And we're saving that locally. Now, once I save that locally, then I can just use S3 to upload that on up to S3. Um, and then I use this detect with Rekognition just to get some of these same values like the S3 bucket and the file name. And then I'm able to get the labels. So I'm able to detect what the image is. Okay. And then I'm just kind of storing all this data back in the database. All right. And then once I'm finished, I'm just passing all this back in the form of an object. And these labels, this is a list. Okay. So let's actually see if this works. So let's just deploy everything from scratch here. Okay, so if I go back here and I just do I'm gonna do a push, or I'm gonna do a git commit. Um, update, updated. Oh, so I forgot to do a git add. So git add first. Then I do a git commit, update it. Then I do a git push. Okay. All right. So we have all that. That gets just gonna be pushed up here. So now that's just gonna trigger that CI/CD process. Um, so Git is we've updated our repo. Now, if we go back to Amplify, see it's already kicked off that build. So what is it? 11, so it already kicked off that. So 211 right here. You see? So it already kicked it off. It's provisioned it. So right now we're just dealing with the. It's going to build both the front and the back end. So let's take a look here. Sometimes it takes a while for this to complete, but okay. We'll take a look at that in a second. Let's close down these other ones here. That should work right now, but that's not the point. So again, it's just cloning the repo, and then now it's just going to start building out this application. It takes about, I think, like 5 minutes. I think maybe a little bit long, a little shorter, but end to end, yeah, this can take enough for you to actually kind of maybe make yourself a sandwich. Okay, so the back end here. So I mean, this is so you can define how the backend builds too. Again, with these with this YAML file, this is a it's almost like a build spec.yaml, but it's amplify.yaml. Okay, and this just gives instructions on what steps need to be performed in each stage of this pipeline. Okay, and that's what this is. So it's doing all these steps that I mentioned before, which is kind of what caused me to stop the video before, because this actually required a workaround, which is right here. So I actually want to make sure Amazon sees this because it's still an issue. All right, so let's see. Oh, sorry. So let me go back to Amplify YouTube. Okay, so it's still building. So this has the front end. So the back end must be built. Yep. So we have check marks there. Okay. So this is almost done. I could tell. So because of the build, so it's serving. It's serving this build. We're almost done. Okay. Almost done. Okay, it actually finished. So let's actually just test this thing out. Let's just see if it actually works. All right, so there I am. And again, it's Sunday. Hey, I'm laid back right now. So what we're going to do is we want to go to inspect so we can take a look at the messages in here. Okay. So first things first, let's go to capture. Okay. Capture should. Yep. Okay, good. All right. So I actually did take off the GPS. Okay, good. So let's go to upload. All right. So that's good. So we have this base64 data. So we should get a response soon. Okay. All right. So we got an error. So we got to go see what that error is about. Okay. Must be an oversight. Let me take a look. So at least we definitely are getting a better response. We got an error, but let's just take a look and show you how to debug these errors. Okay, whenever you get an error in a Lambda function, the first thing you want to do is you want to go look at the CloudWatch logs. Okay, so you do that by going to monitor. So right now we're inside of the Lambda function, and we're going to go to monitor, and we want to view CloudWatch logs, and we want to view like the last logs that we got. So it's this one, 216. Error detected in labels. Oh, okay. Okay. So this is an easy one. This is just a permissions issue. Okay, thank God. So let me just go ahead and so I just picked a basic generic role, but this is great actually because it just kind of shows you kind of how AWS is going to work. So if we could go back to this Lambda here, go back to the Lambda function. Configuration, permissions. This role we have, all right, it only allows us to do these things here. So let's see here. Where's the role here? View role document. Actually, let me just add something to this role here. So this is the role name that the Lambda is actually running on, this execution role, and it's limited. And so I'm just going to go ahead and let me just add some permissions. I'm just going to give it admin just for the purpose of this demonstration. Of course, you don't want to be running this in prod, but all right. So if I do this again, let me go ahead and clear these logs off just so it's easier to see. should get a better result. So if I go back here, so this is permissions. Where is our, okay, so let me go ahead and do this again. All right, I'm going to capture. Okay, I got an image, I captured it. All right, and I want to upload it. Okay, so I got the base64 data. All right, looks like we got our response. We got our labels. Hey, we got our labels. It worked. All right, listen, that's it. I mean, so that you saw that was the reason why that Lambda function didn't work. So that's basically it here. Yeah, I mean, I know this was like a long video, but I just kind of wanted to walk through the different stages of the application, how to kind of set it all up. And I'm going to be doing another one of these that actually includes maps. So maybe stay, forward looking for that. But in the meantime, listen, let me know if you have any questions. You see that the app works. It's running, in Amplify. You saw the command line work that we did. And hey, if you have any questions, let me know. I will definitely do my best to get back with you, and I'll try to get these videos to be more smoother going forward. Thank you and have a great day.